when they went to the queen to tell her her subjects had no bread, do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people.
And when they went...
What's going on? Do I have sound? Jeez. I tell you what, let me see. I've got some little controllers here. Man, that sound sounds horrible, doesn't it? Good gravy. I can't ever get anything right here. Definitely not AI. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can help this thing out. I feel like I can hear the whole room. What is going on? All right. There. Doesn't that help? That's a lot better. Oh, let's see. Serving you royal level conversations on a peasant's budget. John Atakis. Yes, that is very true. And Porta Ange Hunter said, just saying, because someone has to shovel through the nonsense from the top. That's us, the peasants, shoveling through the fun stuff. Speaking of AI this morning, sorry guys, this is going to be like the greatest show ever. We broke all of our records yesterday. It was absolutely awesome. Thank you everyone for watching as you did. Okay, so speaking of not being AI, apparently there's this new trend, which I think a lot of people kind of already realized, but we didn't know the scale of it. And that is that Amazon is selling AI books. So fake AI copies of Leland Vitter's book, who I actually don't even know who that is, sold on Amazon. So what this is saying here is the popularity of Leland Vitter's best-selling book, Born Lucky, apparently has some looking to cash in on the success. Several AI deepfakes of the book have been sold on Amazon, leading to some accidentally purchase the books without realizing they are not authored by the On Balance host. This isn't really about me because I'll be okay, and we appreciate you knowing which book to buy, but there's a lot of people getting scammed out of a lot of hard-earned money and buying fake books, Vitter said. So basically what they do is the AI will come in and they're authors, and you can tell them that using AI chatbots. So they use AI chatbots to generate books based on using your name, using publicly available facts about you, and then they're spitting out usually 50 to 100 page books. We can put books in quotation marks there, and they're uploading them to Amazon through something called Kindle Direct Publishing, Friedman said. So basically, Amazon set up some light guardrails to prevent people from publishing Amazon books, but apparently it mostly gets ignored. Okay. And so be careful buying books on Amazon. Make sure you're actually buying a book from the author and you're not buying some AI creation. Which got me thinking, as I read that article as intended, maybe I should cash in. Maybe I should have AI go through and listen to a whole bunch of these shows and then write some book for me. I could be like, look, I'm a best-selling author. I sold 8 copies on Amazon. Okay, another thing that happened yesterday, just in kind of wrapping up a few little tidbits here and there before we get into the main meat of our show today, is yesterday we played a clip of Howard Lutnick talking about Epstein being the world's premier blackmailer. And he specifically said that Bill Gates didn't speak up or think that Epstein was creepy and continue to hang around him because he was blackmailed, right? That was part of the thing. Well, yesterday, that comment did get some attention, which I suspected it should. And it got mentioned on MSNBC about how Howard Lutnick might be the dumbest member in the cabinet. And he doesn't seem to get the message that the Trump administration is in cover-up mode.
The other thing I want to say about Lutnick, and this is going to maybe seem like a low blow, but it's kind of an important low blow, is that the Commerce Secretary is really stupid. Like in a cabinet of dumb people, like where you have a weekend talk show host and a fake wrestling executive, like he stands out as the dumbest. And if you polled the cabinet, they would all say that he's the dumbest based on reporting. And that's important to say because like sometimes dumb people just don't know how to cover up, how to stay in line with the talking points. All Lutnick is saying there is just the obvious truth, right? That like you and I know, that Tara knows, as well as anybody, that like Lutnick it isn't clicking with him. That like he needs to go along with the plan. The other thing,
Lutnick, you haven't quite figured it out yet. We're in cover-up mode. That is one thing about the Epstein story. It just doesn't make a lot of sense what they're telling us. Just you don't have to be like any kind of rocket scientist to figure out that all the stories don't quite fit together. He can't be the world's premier trafficker and also be, someone just downloading stuff. Which brings me to our first ad read, which is totally off topic. Let's be clear. Cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It's here. And this latest move cements the reality that in the biggest way yet, Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's top crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low, free DeFi, staking awards, and real-world perks like cash back on your spends. To launch America's first CRO treasury, when it's done, this new company will be the biggest CRO holder out there. Want in on the action? Head to Crypto.com today and grab some CRO. Let's make crypto great again. It's funny, as I continue this liberation journey, this journey towards liberty, crypto is going to be a very important tool for the future. I really do believe that as they implement the control grid. We'll talk about that a little bit today. Okay, so, and another thing that I found kind of interesting, this is a clip from Thomas Massie in Kentucky doing a little on the trail campaigning. And this is Thomas Massie, in my opinion, being disingenuous. It's interesting because people like Tucker Carlson talk about Thomas Massie as being really genuine. And I do get the impression that Thomas Massie is really genuine. I think he's in Congress for all the right reasons. And I think that he is really, truly, in many, many ways, a model American. But he's got this little hypocritical thread that runs through him. And in politicians, this kind of drives us nuts. And it drives us nuts the most by people who we think should be our closest allies. And when I say we, I'm talking about we the peasants, right? The people who have to live here, who kind of have to survive no matter who's in charge. And we look at someone like Thomas Massie as a kindred spirit, very intelligent, very smart, figured it out for himself, lives on his own homestead, totally off grid. Awesome. Right? Then why does he seem to buck with Donald Trump? And why does he seem to buck with the budget? And, we've talked extensively about he's the one who'll vote to advance the Inflation Reduction Act, which, for Thomas Massie, all the walking around with the debt clock on his lapel, he's the one who pushed that thing through committee. So this is him taking credit for the appointment of Robert Kennedy Jr. and being a little cute with this little impression of Donald Trump. And this isn't really like newsworthy per se. It just goes to show that there's just so much disingenuous within the Republican Party.
And he said, "Do you know Bobby?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you friends with Bobby?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Call him up. Tell him to get ready." So I got off the phone with Trump. I told Bobby Kennedy, I called him up immediately, and I said, "Number one, I got good news and bad news." He said, "Well, what's the good news or the bad news?" And I said, "Well, Trump thinks you want to ban all the vaccines." He goes, "I never said that." And then he said, "What's the good news?" I said, "I think if you clear this up, I think he's going to pick you for HHS secretary." The next day, he picked Bobby Kennedy for HHS secretary.
So a lot of people are kind of criticizing Massie here because it feels like he's, using this little clout, like he's in an open beef with Donald Trump. And yet he's here like, I've got so much influence with Donald Trump. I influenced a cabinet pick in RFK, and he's got the relationship with RFK. But it's just all very interesting considering he's kind of picked this Epstein thing as a wedge between him and Donald Trump. And RFK has connections with Epstein. So it just goes to show. This comes from The Last Refuge. This is a very good this is a very good what would I call this? Someone really good to follow on Twitter, and it's actually an amalgamation of writers who do this. And so they put together these great posts. And they made this assessment about the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And I think this is really, really applicable to the conversation we've been having all week about how we're in this kind of bigger cultural war. He says this, or they say this: the moonbat leftists are not the biggest problem. They never have been. They are ideologues, mostly insufferable, stupid, violent at times, but easy to spot. Remember, Democrats' quest for power, Republicans' quest for money. Always underline this, because it's really important. The moonbat leftists seek power, seek to control your life, and they are open in their insufferably stupid arguments to get there. When they start to lose, they turn violent. This is their history. That said, they are not the most dangerous. The Republican right are the more dangerous because their priority is money. As a result, their approaches, goals, objectives, and arguments can be purchased. Republicans have no interests, goals, or objectives, nor allegiances that supersede their primary objective, getting money, growing their wealth. Democrats will come to you with a knife, a gun, or a baseball bat. You can see them. The Republican guy standing beside you, however, is willing to take payments to shoot you in the ear when you don't see it coming. This is why it seems like Democrats stick together and Republicans split. Democrats are chasing a common goal, a collective goal, power. Republicans are chasing a common goal, but an individual goal, money, their wealth. Donors contribute to the Democrat agenda because their interests to benefit from power. It benefits their interest. Donors contribute to the Democrat agenda because their interest to benefit from power. It's in their interest to benefit from power. Republicans modify their agenda to benefit donors because their goal is money. Democrats stay on task, power. Republicans are flexible, money. You enter a war against leftists with extreme danger. However, the danger is not the war in front of you. It's the army beside you waiting to get a payment from the enemy in front of you. Out of 1,000 Democrats, 900 will join to defend a weakened moonbat leftist. See Jimmy Kimmel. Out of 1,000 Republicans, you will find maybe 5 willing to cover your back regardless of how much bribery is put in front of them. Remember this, understand this, trust this, and the reality of who presents the most danger to you is accurately framed. Republicans do not simply snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, they sell defeat to the highest bidder. In your lifetime, you are watching this unfold. There were Democrats in the same outlook as Republicans. They were known as Blue Dog Democrats. The Blue Dogs were willing to compromise power to sell power in return for financial payment. Traditional Blue Dogs were names like Hillary and Bill Clinton. Their prism was a symbol of money. However, this group faced the introduction of hardline ideological believers, the communists or Marxists represented by Barack Obama. Obama Inc. battled Clinton Inc. to determine the future of the Democrats. The ideologues won, and the Democrat Blue Dogs in their tribe, those willing to concede ideology for money, were purged from their ranks. Modern Democrats, post-Obama takeover, are now pure ideologues. By any means necessary is the operational objective of modern leftists. This is why government under Obama flipped the switch so openly and began weaponizing power, purging government agencies and replacing the staff with ideologues, crushing opposition by brute force and targeting. Simultaneously, in the smaller Republican ranks, there was a small group who wanted to face down the same battle inside the Republican Party. The original Tea Party represented this group, a smaller assembly trying to put ideology, freedom, and liberty at the forefront of the Republican objective. Unlike the leftist effort, the Tea Party effort inside the Republican Party failed. Republican leadership crushed the Liberty Rebellion and went back to business, taking money from the ideological Marxists who now ruled the centers of power. People who don't quite understand this, what was taking place, stood and watched frustrated at the dynamic of Republicans who conceded every battle to the left. What abused GOP viewers didn't understand was the core of the issue. Democrats want power, Republicans want money. Each time the Republicans could win a policy issue, they sold the loss to Democrats. Battered conservatives grew more frustrated and more frustrated. Now we enter the era of MAGA, represented by billionaire Donald J. Trump, who, like Obama before him, began the fight inside the Republican Party. The Tea Party rebellion quickly re-engaged Trump and formed MAGA. The ideological fight inside the Republican Party, liberty over money, was on again. MAGA represents opposition to the leftist ideological advancement. But the Republican Assembly will not concede. In a way, their resistance makes sense. If liberty and freedom become the priority, the advancement of personal wealth becomes more difficult. Simultaneously, if retention and assembly of wealth is the priority, liberty and freedom ideologues become impediments. Again, MAGA within Republicanism must be crushed when money is the priority. This internal Republican battle has been unfolding in various reference points for almost a decade now, while the internal Democrat battle was long ago decided. The root issue within the Republican apparatus still surrounds the greatest evil. Quote, the love of money is the root of all evil. This conflict has not yet been fully decided. Yet, admittedly, and thankfully, MAGA has made some significant gains. The Republican Party has has a lower income demographic and a more ideological working class base. However, don't be fooled. The top tier of the Republican apparatus is unchanged, albeit they are facing more entrenched ideological opposition from the awakened MAGA forces. The top tier will still sell out the base, still compromise for personal profit, and still take payment for policy. So within that kind of understanding of what we're dealing with inside the Republican Party when we're dealing with the entrenched power, the people who've been there a long time, is that they'll sell their vote. That's what I see with Thomas Massie. It feels like a vote seller. It feels like when the Inflation Reduction Act came up, he stood on principle to let it go through. But then when Trump's bills come up, oh, I stand on principle and I stop them in their tracks. When it comes to Epstein, you remain silent for 4 years under a Democrat regime. But under Trump, you're speaking up, you're out, you're loud. And worst of all, you're working with the Democrats, which makes people wonder, is there a possibility there's a little, greasing of the skids, so to speak, to get him to do that? It's interesting. And I think it happens with all the Republicans. Here's another example of a Republican out in Nebraska who's 87 years old, who is holding on to preventing that one electoral college vote. If you remember, Nebraska splits their electoral college votes. Most states are kind of a winner take all. In Nebraska, they do it by congressional district, and there's one congressional district in the city of Omaha that breaks blue. So you got this big, bright red state of Nebraska, wildly conservative, but then you have this little college district, boop, that gets a blue electoral college vote. And this last election, depending on what projection you were looking at, the election was projected to be close enough that if Kamala had won a couple of those swing states, that one single electoral college vote in Nebraska could have been the deciding vote. And it was completely within the power of the Republicans to change that before the last election. They're still trying to change it because it's considered a gimme vote to the Democrats. This is Alex DeGrassi talking about how this 187-year-old Republican is holding up this change, and it makes you wonder, has he sold his vote?
Nebraska's huge, okay? And then you've got one guy, some 83-year-old Republican, I saw him quoted in the media. He's like, they'll, what are they going to do to us? Hey, brother, what have they been doing to us for years? They've been crushing us on this front, okay? So I don't know who this guy is or what his problem is. Some, state representative around Omaha. But this is not just important for the House this time.
So he's saying, what's the left going to do to us? I mean, who cares if they get this extra vote? I mean, what's the harm in having a Democrat in power from time to time? Well, first of all, if they come into power in 2028 or 2032, we're probably going to have a real problem with now retribution for the retribution for the retribution, right? So that could be an issue. But the other thing is, look at what the Democrats do consistently. For how many years now they've encroached upon all of our rights? Well, how has this Democrat not recognized that? He thinks it's just, business as usual? I don't understand.
Obviously, this has an effect on the Electoral College based off the rules in Nebraska. You've got that blue dot in Omaha. So we've got to take care of this one. It's so easy. It's not even funny. I mean, it's not gerrymandering the slightest bit. It's a fair map. Okay. It's not giving a Democrat some freebie. Kentucky won, North Carolina won, and South Carolina won. You add all those up, it's like 20, I think. So that's where we get
more than that.
That's where we get the 15, right? So that's huge. I mean, this is
20. It's
20.
Right? I think it's gross. A gross number of 21.
Yeah,
five in Texas, 4 in Florida, 3 in Ohio. If you this is okay, folks.
And I texted this.
This is maximal. This is maximalist. This is maximalist.
This is the maximalist.
We have to do this because.
Okay, so they're talking about adding, doing redistricting, and the Republicans are positioned in a position where they can run away with the midterms just by sheer mathematics on the seats, right? They can make it to where Democrats can't win some of these seats unless they can pull off some magical 60% of the vote, right? They just don't have the raw numbers in some of these districts to flip them. So they don't put a lot of energy into them. And it goes the same way with Republicans. Republicans don't put a lot of energy into districts or races that they can't win. Here in the local Republican Party, we've got an island called Bainbridge Island, super liberal. There are no conservatives on the ballot. None. Zero. Zilch. Not a rhino. Nothing. If you've ever been associated with a conservative or a Republican Party, you're probably not running or are going to be successful on Bainbridge Island. This last off-cycle election cycle, there wasn't a single person on the ballot for any position that the Republican Party thought was even moderately Republican and could even not even just endorse, just simply say better than the other guy. Couldn't even come up with that. So Republicans will just abandon races too. Democrats do the same thing. If Republicans wanted power, this would have been done, right? They would have redistricted, they would have maximized it, and we would be 20 seats ahead in the House. But instead, the Republicans have played soft. Why have they played soft? Well, it seems like in a redistricting battle, that'd be a really good time to get out the brown bag full of money. I'm just saying, if money's the goal, that's one way to do it. This is another interesting little thing that Harmeet Dillon just sued LA County and the Sheriff's Department down there, because down in California and LA, they have not been issuing the concealed carry permits that they're supposed to be issuing. And this isn't just a small problem. This is a major problem. We're talking 8,000 applications were sat on while only 2 were approved.
The U.S. Department of Justice is suing the LA County Sheriff's Department, accusing it of violating people's Second Amendment rights.
Specifically over the department's handling of concealed weapon licenses.
Our Witness News reporter Sophie Flay is here now to explain why and to tell us what the sheriff is now saying about this. Sophie?
Yeah, David, it started with an investigation. Now we have this lawsuit, and LA County Sheriff Robert Luna says he's disappointed to see the lawsuit and that some of the accusations don't add up. The Department of Justice is accusing the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department of moving too slow to process gun licenses for people who want to carry concealed weapons, according to a new lawsuit. The DOJ says it violates the Second Amendment.
People have a constitutional right today in Los Angeles to be able to go in, get their weapon, carry it, and enjoy those rights, and they're being denied that.
According to the complaint, the Sheriff's Department only approved 2 applicants out of 8,000 over the span of 2 months.
I think there's open hostility in Los Angeles and its leadership to gun possession and gun use. I think that's very clear, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
The lawsuit comes after the DOJ launched an investigation into the delay in March. Earlier this year, the Sheriff's Department cited a significant staffing crisis for the backlog of around 4,000 applications, with only 14 people in the unit approving permits. In response to this lawsuit, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna says,
I'm disappointed.
Luna says they've approved a lot more applications than the DOJ gives them credit for, and he's increased staffing.
I wish we didn't have to make people wait too long, but we've got to do it right. I don't want to be issuing CCWs to people that shouldn't have them, who have criminal histories or have mental health histories. So I want to make sure that when our name's on it, that you actually should have one.
The lawsuit seeks a permanent injunction requiring the Sheriff's Department to issue concealed carry licenses in a timely fashion under the law. David?
You know, it's interesting. I never really thought deeply about gun control laws, other than I generally disapproved of them because I wanted to be able to carry guns, right? And since I didn't plan on carrying one illegally, I would like to carry one legally, which means I'd like there not to be a bunch of restrictive gun laws. Seemed pretty logical to me. And when I went to prison, I started to, and you know, in my life, I've only ever met people who've pulled the trigger on, you know, targets and deer. So to me, guns are like just part of culture. They're part of our heritage, and they're there for protection in like the most odd of scenarios that you're hardly ever going to run into, right? I grew up in a home where we did not have guns, just didn't have guns. My dad's perspective is there's kids in the house, there's going to be no guns in the house. He was a hunter. He was not anti-gun by any stretch of the imagination at all. In fact, he was a marksman in the military, but he didn't want guns in the house with little kids. Okay, great, right? I feel differently, take care of my guns. But when I got into prison, I started to meet people who actually murdered other people with guns. I started to meet people who did robberies with guns. And guess what? They didn't apply for concealed carry permits. And they weren't aware what the concealed carry laws or what the laws around guns at all were wherever they were committing crime, right? So this idea that somebody comes in and applies for a concealed carry permit, I understand doing a background check, but at a certain point, you have to recognize that at least now you have their name. The real criminals aren't applying for background checks. And if you deny someone, there's a good chance they're probably still going to go carry a gun anyways. It's just pretty interesting. But again, right, local government. Yesterday we played a long clip about the local school board in Iowa that hired an illegal immigrant. Just almost unbelievable, right? How they can fall through the cracks. He's claiming to be a PhD. I mean, the problem is so bad. You've got guys out with driver's licenses, actual CDLs that say no name given. And you've got the superintendent of schools in Des Moines, Iowa is in the same category. He's got fake IDs and fake this and fake backstory. Unbelievable. Like the corruption, and that word is sometimes hard because, we might have family, friends, or people that we like that work at these local counties, but the logic of these counties has become corrupt, right? The fact that you can even have 8,000 applications and only approve 2, that's not a staffing problem. That's an ideology problem. So anyways, this is Energy Secretary talking about some cuts he's made at the Department of Energy. This goes right along with Lee Zeldin over at the EPA. These two guys are in a slash and burn operation between Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Education. Those 3 departments are seeing huge amounts of slashes, but those 3 departments are also 3 of the departments that really went overboard in rulemaking, mandate making, legislating from the executive branch instead of through the legislature. So it's no surprise that they're able to be kind of dismembered in such rapid fashion. But this is the Energy Secretary talking about some of the billions of dollars he's saved from going out the door through the Department of Energy.
This has been thousands of work hours to evaluate all of these projects. Just an incredible, irresponsible deployment of taxpayer money. I mean, should American taxpayers really fund decarbonizing Uber Eats in San Francisco or building e-bike lanes in Portlandia? $600 million to further subsidize construction of unreliable, expensive electricity sources in California. California can do what it wants, but the 49 other states' taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing that. This has been thousands of work.
California can do what it wants with its own tax revenue. Okay. But he's like, that's billions of dollars. Do you guys recognize how much money that is? It is so much money. So much money. It's a ton of savings. I actually had this thought. I wonder if it's possible, if it's even in their desires to try to figure out how to run the budget just on incoming funds from tariffs. I don't know. I don't know what the deficit is or what the shortfall is, but it could be pretty significant. Before we get to Scott Bessent and what he says, let's talk about the NFL. Hey, football fanatics, are you ready for some primetime NFL action? Tune in to Westwood One for all the gridiron glory you crave, from jaw-dropping touchdowns to game-changing plays. Don't miss a moment of the excitement. Catch every snap, every tackle, and every victory on Westwood One. You can listen to the NFL on the NFL app, on Westwood One Sports app, on westwoodonesports.com, via Westwood One station streams, or by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports. If it's the NFL, it's on Westwood One. Every time I do that, I imagine my dad in his house, all of his devices like lighting up. My dad, as far as people I know, my dad has the most wired up house of any house I've ever seen. Now, granted, it's not like a lot of my friends are doing, smart houses or anything, but anyways, whenever I say read that ad or one like it, Alexa, I can just see my dad's house. Just, what can I do for you? Sapphire Patriot. Am I the only one with no sound? I've got sound. Hear me now, Sapphire Patriot? Can you hear me now? I've got sound on my end. No one else is complaining. PB Brown Scouts, welcome. Howdy, howdy. Shantini, howdy. Carlites, howdy. Miss saying hello to you guys. Frazier woke up thinking, finally, a podcast for those of us who can't charge tax to anyone else. Shantini says she hears me just fine. Sapphire Patriot can't hear me. I don't know why that would be. Sapphire Patriot, I would suggest jumping over to Rumble. That's what I would suggest. I have no idea why YouTube can't hear me. We're good everywhere else, Sapphire Patriot. We're good on Rumble, and I'm getting everyone else says we're fine. So, okay, let's jump into Scott Bessent here. We are going to now start talking about the shutdown and kind of all of the ramifications. I don't know how long this shutdown is going to happen. There's a part of me thinks that the messaging has been so bad on the Democrats' end, and most Americans that care about this shutdown are barking at the Democrats. They're not barking at the Republicans, at least not that I'm seeing. Okay. And so there's a part of me that thinks this is only going to last like another day or two, and that we're not going to get a ton of cuts. So we'll see. I mean, we can only hope that this shutdown lasts indefinitely, but it probably won't. All right. So this is Scott Bessent, and he's talking about Trump's, well, we'll listen to it. Trump's method of doing all this.
Joe, what they're asking for 1.5 trillion increase in spending. And let's just go back. that would be almost as big as the ill-fated IRA, which caused the worst inflation in half a century. So they want to put this inflationary impulse into President Trump's already strong economy. The economy is growing at 3.8%. We don't need 1.5 trillion pumped in. The Democrats seem to love inflation. Joe, what they are asking for, they're asking for 1.5 trillion.
I love that. It would take me a little bit longer because I have to think through how to explain it, but the Democrats definitely use inflation for control. I don't actually think the Republicans ever want inflation. I don't think they do. I don't think they ever do. In fact, it's probably the only thing that they align on not wanting because it dilutes their personal wealth. But the Democrats, it's about power. Inflation leads to power. Inflation leads to consolidation of assets. Inflation is a tool that they use, clearly. I mean, it's a socialist collectivist tool for control. All right, this is Steve Bannon. So the Democrats have really shot themselves in the foot, right? Trump's going to make some huge cuts, and I'm going to skip this one. Trump's going to make some huge cuts, and we're starting to see some real things. Man, I'm sorry, guys. That Scott Bessent video was a couple videos too early. I wanted to talk about a couple other things first, and I don't want to skip over this stuff. So I'm just going to back up in my flow and show you this. So yesterday, they started their big initiative. The DOJ, military, basically everybody in the federal government started their big initiative in Memphis. And this is Attorney General Pam Bondi announced this morning. In just 72 hours, our Memphis Safe Task Force is making an incredible impact on this iconic American city. Yesterday, 40 arrests were made, including a Tren de Agua terrorist, a felon in possession of a firearm, a man wanted for rape of a child, and an arrest for an assault on a federal officer. To date, there have been 93 arrests and 28 illegal guns seized. Our work is saving lives. That's pretty significant. I don't know what their normal arrests are in a 72-hour period or how many illegal guns they normally seize. I'd like to see that, but that looks pretty good. I like to see that there. Okay. Another thing too. This is just interesting. We've talked about this a little bit more in the past. It's the Sean Diddy Combs trial. He is up for sentencing today, and the prosecution's asking for 11 years. His defense is asking for basically released. It wants time served. But there is an interesting thing here. In this whole case, this woman named Virginia Hunn, who's an ex-girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs, in the indictment, she is identified as victim 3. Okay. She told the judge, Subrenum, in a letter that she was pressured to feel like a victim by prosecutors, and she believes Combs should be released to his family. I told them I was not, but they insisted that I was, even when I expressed my truth otherwise, she wrote. Referring to prosecutors, I understand they concluded that I had been sex trafficked and involved in forced prostitution. I did not agree with that conclusion. I was not trafficked. I did not engage in prostitution with him or others. Prosecutors initially planned to call Hunn as a witness during Combs' trial this summer, but later said they were unable to reach her. Other witnesses testified she was in a relationship with Combs while she was dating Cassie Ventura, and one witness said he witnessed Combs being violent to her in 2015. Gina, though she will not be testifying, is a main character in this trial, prosecutor Christy Slavic told the court in June. In August, after Combs' conviction, Hunn wrote a judge a similar letter requesting that Combs be released, arguing that he was no longer violent and deserved to be with his family. Our relationship, like many, was not always perfect. We experienced ups and downs, and mistakes were made, but he was willing to acknowledge the mistakes and make better decisions in the future. Okay, I need you guys to chime in on the chat. Are we dealing with a battered spouse syndrome situation here where she's kind of become codependent on Jeffrey Combs and she's basically going to defend him no matter what, right? You see this with domestic violence situations all the time. So is that what's going on here? Or do we have a corrupt prosecution that basically had a man in mind and they found a crime? Right? Is that what's going on here? Was this a lot of people believe, and I don't know that I'm not in this camp, that Jeffrey Epstein and Sean Combs were kind of two peas in a pod. They were both doing the same kind of blackmail thing, creating situations where famous people and politicians were in compromising positions. right? So I want you guys to chime in here. Is this victim number 3, who couldn't be found to testify in this huge trial, right? Is victim number 3 got battered spouse syndrome and codependency and trying to protect her abuser? Or do you guys think that this is the prosecution that got a little bit out over their skis, named her as a victim when she really wasn't? As in they made up her own story and fed it back to her. So tell me in the chat what you guys think about that, because I am curious. I'm split, man. I'm split on this one. It could easily be battered spouse. It'll be interesting to see if the prosecution addresses that specifically or not. Sapphire Patriot on YouTube says battered woman syndrome. Yeah. I'm glad that you chimed in there. I was curious what a woman's perspective on that would be, hearing that, right? If that is hey, the prosecution is taking advantage of me, or is it battered woman? And why didn't the prosecution get her to testify? And why did they just say they couldn't reach her? Is this kind of like how we couldn't reach Osama bin Laden for all those years? Even though we knew the address of the cave he was in. Farazer said, whenever this story comes up, I change screens. Not interested. He's not interested in Sean Diddy Combs. I'm not really interested in, except if he is power brokering, it kind of becomes relevant. So yeah. All right. Now let's talk about the shutdown. Carlite says they're all actors. Not sure I trust any of the narratives. They could all things could be true. She could be telling the truth that she wasn't trafficked, and she could be a battered spouse, having battered spouse syndrome. It could be both. Okay, so this is MSNBC, and they're talking about Russ Vogt, the shutdown, and the cuts. They are coming to the realization, the Democrat zeitgeist is coming to the realization they may have shot themselves in the foot with this particular shutdown. I think a lot of times Democrats perceive they come out on the winning end of the shutdown, put a little pain to their constituents, blame it on the Republicans, right? That kind of thing. But this time, yes, their constituents are going to feel pain, but unfortunately, they didn't really set it up where they can really blame the Republicans.
So, McKay, first of all, fascinating article. And it made me think about how you talk about kind of Russ Vogt as, I'd say, the opposite of Elon Musk. He was brought in to head Doge, but he was kind of improvisational, to say the least. But when you talk about Russ Vogt, he was always there, right? Quietly, strategically planning a way. So my question to Michael's point is, what are you watching for next as the two men, the president and Russ Vogt, are meeting?
Yeah, the big question that he's going to have to answer in this meeting with President Trump, and that all of us should be paying very close attention to, is where is he recommending furloughs, which is the traditional thing that happens during a shutdown, versus where is Vogt recommending reduction in force, which is essentially permanently firing these people, right? Because this is a really important thing that voters and viewers need to understand. This shutdown could be very different from all the shutdowns that we've lived through over the last several years. I think we've become kind of inured to this idea that we have a dysfunctional government, shutdowns happen, it's disruptive, but then they come back. What Vogt is trying to do is to use this opportunity to permanently lop off large parts of the federal government, get rid of federal workers that he sees as basically not on board with the Trump train.
This man.
And to Michael's point, when I would ask Vogt's allies, well, what about this question of when a Democrat gets back into the White House? That's going to happen someday. Aren't you going to regret, this huge power grab? And what they said to me, and they were very candid about it, to their credit, they said, well, the goal is to unravel enough of the federal government now that it will make it impossible for Democrats to rebuild it, even when they do get back to the White House.
One of the things I'm committed to do, and this is completely nonpartisan, Michael, is
one of the things back when I was in college, in political science, you spend a fair amount of time studying the Great Depression, World War II, and the New Deal, right? The FDR New Deal. Spent his first 100 days in office just going crazy, creating new departments, new branches of the government, borrowing money at rapid rates, confiscating gold and silver, devaluing it, right? And at the time, when you look back in history, when you're in elementary school, you look at that period of history and you study it, and it was like America was coming together to come out of the Great Depression, and they empowered Franklin D. Roosevelt to, borrow money and to invest in America and build the Hoover Dam and do the Tennessee Valley Dam thing or whatever they called it and do the Peace Corps and the Work Corps and all these different things, right? But when you actually go back in history and you look at the record, you look at the newspaper articles and things like that, there was always people going, whoa, you're spending money we don't have, right? The country just went bankrupt. You just confiscated gold and silver. And now you're borrowing money that doesn't exist. You're mortgaging future generations. But FDR and his cabinet just pushed. When the Supreme Court kind of projected that they were going to balk at some of this New Deal stuff because it was clearly unconstitutional, what did FDR do? I'll pack the court. I'll just fill it up with all the people I want until I get a majority. And then they struck a deal. And if you know history, right, a Republican Supreme Court justice essentially struck a deal to keep the Supreme Court at 9 justices in order to allow some of the New Deal stuff to continue on. And so that is happening in inverse right now, right? Back then, FDR was growing the government, but couldn't pay for it. And now we have all the mechanisms to pay for it, unlimited debt spending. But Donald Trump is trying to slash the government. It's kind of the opposite. FDR grew the government to such a degree that when future Republicans came into office, they couldn't pare it back. It was set in motion. Well, Donald Trump is taking this to do the exact inverse and to slash the government to where they can't just put it back. With decisions like Loper Bright, this is great because it totally clips the executive branch wings when it comes to rulemaking. Now, Democrats are still in complete and total denial that this shutdown is being led out of they're in total denial that this shutdown is being led in an effort to not give illegal immigrants or people we perceive as illegal immigrants benefits. And they're saying things like, but things like SNAP and WIC, you're not going to have money for it.
The government shutdown could mean a federal program that provides food assistance to low-income mothers and children could run out of money in days. Sources tell CNN White House budget chief Russ Vogt warned House Republicans yesterday it could happen by next week. The most recent government data shows that nearly 7 million women, infants, and children were eligible, for WIC benefits.
Folks are really concerned about, in the long run, can they rely on this program to get their needs met? We know that.
Okay, I want to stop right there. People are concerned that in the long run, if they can rely on this program to get their needs met. I would pose the question, why are you relying on the government? Full stop, right? Why are you relying on the government? So let's listen to the rest of this. Remember, Democrats want power, Republicans want money. Republicans take money from the lobbyists like farmers and stuff because WIC means there's always a place for the farmer to sell his cheese, his milk, his grain, his corn, okay? So they take the money. On the Democrat side, they create dependency because these programs, right, are what are feeding your kid and they want you to rely on them and to be dependent on them. Most people who are on WIC do not watch the news or pay attention to what's happening. Okay. So next week, when their WIC doesn't work and they can't buy their milk and eggs for their kids, they're going to get a little bit upset. They've created a dependency cycle, which then creates that feedback loop of politician, I need you, right? Let me give you some power so you can help me, because they become dependent.
For babies, WIC provides 100% of their nutritional needs,
100%?
whether that's supporting their mom with lactation consulting if they're breastfeeding, or providing potentially medical specialty infant formula. So that could be a real.
So basically what they're saying here is the shutdown is going to come to a real head when normal people who are on WIC can't get those benefits. And I simply look at it and I go, but you've created a situation where people are dependent on the government for food. Right? That's the problem there. It's the logic of it that's the problem. Here's another little clip from yesterday. This is Jared Golden, Representative Jared Golden.
Senator, I'm interested to know what you say to your colleague in the House, Jared Golden, a Democrat from Maine. He says that this government shutdown is the result of hardball politics driven by demands of far left groups that they're making on Democratic Party leaders to make a show of their opposition to President Trump. The shutdown is hurting Americans and our economy. The irony is that it has handed more power to the president. Now, he says this fight is ostensibly about health care, and he notes that he opposes the Medicaid cuts, wants to extend the tax credits. But then he says some of my colleagues in the majority party have reasonable concerns going to high-income households. Normal policy disagreements, though, are no reason to subject our constituents to the continued harm of this shutdown. Do you think he's wrong?
That's a whole lot of gibberish. The most important thing, again, is that what I know for a fact, 24 million Americans are going to have their premiums increasing
So wait,
starting November
sorry,
1st.
you think that this is
So-
the result of hardball politics driven by demands of far-left groups? That's gibberish?
No, I think that whole
This is Ruben Gallego talking, and he's responding to Representative Golden.
conversation, everything you just said, to me doesn't really matter. I know what
So
the
you don't
fact
think
is.
that Chuck Schumer, for
24
example, is
million
acting
Americans are
because
gonna
he might
have
face
their
a
health
primary from
insurance
AOC?
increase. 24 million Americans. No, I don't think. I think that's BS.
Okay, so this isn't happening for political pressure. This is happening because we want to get 24 million Americans on insurance. The problem is it's who those 24 million Americans are, right? This is Representative Liccardo, and let's listen to him. We just kind of got to go through this and ingest this information, right? The shutdown is complicated, but also not complicated at the same time. So we want to be able to get enough of this information in here that we can kind of see the signal through the noise. Oh, let me share a screen here. It's going to be nice to get Ron back.
The president saying he's going after, quote, Democratic things, also Democratic takes, as you know. So Russ Vogt yesterday saying they're targeting $8 billion of green projects. California is included in his list of targets. Are there specific programs in your district that you're concerned about this morning?
Oh, absolutely. And look, everyone should be concerned. What we know this president is willing to do in the name of vindictiveness really has no limitation. And so we're going to need to do everything we can. For example, NASA Ames is a very important institution in my district. That is not just important for all the scientific discovery that happens there, but also for our Defense Department.
Does that protect you, though?
The rule protects all of us, I think, as Americans.
No. I mean, yes, you point out the importance of those programs.
Sure.
Do you believe that in some way insulates them?
Maybe. Look, I don't think there is any ideological or logical limitation to what this president's willing to do. It's all about vindictiveness. So if it's in our district, we know we have to fight for it.
So his only guiding premise, Donald Trump, according to this Democrat, is vindictiveness. Now, it can easily look like vindictiveness when he starts pulling programs from Democrat states. Why would it look that way? Well, have we ever considered that those Democrat states have programs that are antithetical to the larger ideological agenda? And it has nothing to do with personal vindictiveness. It literally has to do with clawing back the government.
How long are Democrats willing to sit through this?
As long as it takes to ensure that when the government reopens, it's a government that actually serves Americans and reduces the cost of living rather than what we know is going to happen if this proposal passes, which is we're going to see 22 million Americans pay twice as much for their health insurance.
I think it's so fascinating how they say things like get things affordable by stimulating, by giving you money, which then we have to pay interest on. It's like anybody who's ever lived through their 20s and done the credit card thing where, you know, you get a credit card, you're like, I don't have any money. You spend $500 and then you earn $500. You pay off the credit card. Now you don't have any money, but you didn't quite pay the credit card all the way off because you got some interest that stacked up for a couple months. And now you're paying, you know what I mean? Interest on interest. That's what's going on here. Oh, we want to make things more affordable. How would you do that? Well, what if I give you some money? Okay, well, give us all some money. And then the price of everything goes up and now the money's worth less. So give us some more money. Okay, now we pay interest on that money. So someone's got to pay interest. Someone's got to pay the money. Even though my underwriting premise is money's not real, at the end of the day, the interest payments are, right? You've got to pay those interest payments. And what you're getting for that is a real concern, right? This is Shaheen, Representative Shaheen, and she's being asked by, I think is by Jones on Fox News. He's asking, are Democrats trying to get illegal immigrants health insurance, right? Is that what the crux of this is? And she answers no, but he goes all the way back and says, your entire party is for this. Why all of a sudden are you guys trying to split the nuance? Oh, you're going to want me to share the screen.
Health insurance marketplace.
I'm so glad you said that.
I haven't heard anybody in my party saying that illegal immigrants should get access to the health insurance marketplace.
I'm so glad.
Okay. Nobody in my party has said that illegal immigrants should get access to the health insurance marketplace.
Glad you said that. Actually, I have some tape of your Democratic Party members saying this on the debate stage. So they've all said it. Let's play the clip.
A lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you've proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
Look at that.
Senator, that's literally every member of your party, from moderate to more progressive, that have said that in the past.
I haven't heard anybody in my party saying.
I haven't heard anybody in my party saying it yet. There it is, right there. All of them, every single person who ran for president, every one of the thought leaders in your party. My health plan includes covering illegal immigrants. I remember watching that happen and being like, did they really just do that? Like, I understand that you would want that, but that doesn't seem like that's something that you would, it's almost so brazen. That was mainstream media asking that question. Don't ask that question. We don't want to know the answer. Oh, your plan includes giving healthcare to illegal aliens? Okay, well, who pays for that healthcare? Oh, all of you that work. Oh, awesome. Awesome. So before we move any further along and talk more about the shutdown, we're going to hear a hilarious one from Elizabeth Warren. You've probably noticed Rumble is growing fast and it's not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium, an easy way to upgrade your experience. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scene drops, and more from your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. Just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. That's rumble.com premium, promo code STUDIO. No ads, more freedom, and content you actually care about. That's the deal. I do recommend you get Rumble Premium because then you can join us in the private at the end of the show when we move over to the private, which today we're going to be talking about some J6 stuff over there. So, all right, Rumble Premium, check that out. It's funny. My wife listens on her own personal account. We have a Rumble Premium account, right? Peasants. But she listens from her own personal account, and she was laughing the other day because she's like, when you go to private, I get so mad because I don't have private on this one account. I'm like, well, just get it. Just get Rumble Premium. Okay, so here we go. This is Elizabeth Warren going totally insane when she's asked about Democrats supporting healthcare for illegal immigrants. Now, you've got to understand, these guys are walking this little nuance where they're like, well, who's illegal, who's legal? If they've got one of those visas like those Haitians and those Venezuelans, they had their visas, revoked. Is that illegal or legal? She's totally flustered over this whole thing.
Republicans say what you're really fighting for is taxpayer dollars for, as they put it, illegal aliens. I know that's not strictly true, but there is a provision.
Excuse me, not strictly true.
It's not true directly, but
out lie. It is a flat out lie.
The way that they frame it.
There is nothing in Medicare that permits one undocumented immigrant to get $1 of assistance.
Senator, if you let me finish the question.
Of course,
Senator,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, in the Democratic counteroffer, the proposal for funding, there is a restoration of Medicaid benefits for certain non-citizens that it had been taken away in the big, beautiful bill, as the Republicans put it. Republicans don't think those people should be getting health care on the taxpayer dime. I'm not asking on the merits. Politically, putting that in there.
This is CBS, and there is not one dime going. Actually, there is. Specifically on the memorandum you guys wrote, you wanted to cover illegals.
Exposes you to this talking point, this lie, as you put it. Why put it in there? Why is it worth it?
No, what's happened is that what we're saying is that whenever hospitals give care, what is going to be the level of reimbursement? And the Republicans said it's going to be a low level. The Democrats said we just want to go back to the level it was before because you're going to bankrupt hospitals. You're going to put rural hospitals out of business. The Republicans and the Democrats plan, nothing changes the number of undocumented immigrants who still get care if they show up bleeding and unconscious at an emergency room. There is absolutely zero difference. The difference is whether or not hospitals, who under laws that date back to Ronald Reagan, may provide emergency care to anyone who's unconscious, will actually get reimbursed at a very low level that will put the hospital ultimately out of business potentially, or at a higher level. The Republicans there is no change in the number of undocumented immigrants who get any help under what the Democrats want. Look,
Senator,
what we're looking for is help for people who are going to get pushed out of nursing homes,
Senator,
help for people who are at home and relying on home health aides. That's
Senator,
what this.
You know what? I had a video teed up that I got rid of. I got rid of it because I felt like it was a little long and it wasn't quite going to fit. And it would have been perfect. And what it was talking about was how, okay, so this is about reimbursements, right? So the Democrats, they want to open up the money so that anybody who goes to the hospitals can be fully reimbursed. So this is how the illegals get benefits. They go to the hospital gets paid as if they're, normal. The big beautiful bill makes it so they can't get any money, and then it lowers the reimbursement amount for certain categories of people. They want to jump all that back up because it's about money for them, right? And power to create dependency. If people have to pay for their own services, they're not dependent on the government for the money to pay for the services and to receive the services, right? So that's what that's all about. And he totally called it on the carpet. The Democrats straight up put in writing that they wanted to return to giving illegal immigrants coverage. And they just can't get around it. When you see her face, or here you've got Chris Coons, these guys are absolutely flabbergasted at the messaging on this. They can't get around it.
Illegally, who got looped in under temporary protection status, who do receive those benefits. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper in the next. Yes, there are.
These guys are just
there are people who have temporary protection status, which makes them, quote, legal. And that's why they're falling under this legal protection, because it was expanded during COVID. And that's, I understand that there's two sides to this argument, but those are the people.
You can only benefit from the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, if you have legal status in this country.
Which was broadly expanded.
We are not fighting for health care for people who are here illegally.
Which was broadly expanded. That's the problem.
We are fighting for health care for Americans.
All right. I understand and appreciate your point on that. We're going to hear John Cornyn's point on that in moments. So, Senator.
Okay. So the big issue here, the Democrats have set up the situation where everybody's legal. Right? Oh, you can't give money to illegals? Okay, well, then let's make them all legal. And Eric Schmidt talked about this. Republicans have been against immigration, illegal immigration, on principle of violating of the law. But if you can make it legal, they didn't care about 20 million people flooding across the border in 4 years. Well, they just cared whether the law was followed. So as long as the Biden administration created these loopholes and these carve-outs and these, exemptions and these mass amnesty provisions, then these people wouldn't be here legally. They were made legal when they got here. They weren't legal on their way here. Does that make sense? They weren't coming with legal reasons. The government made them legal so that they could get them into the labor pool, issuing them driver's licenses, giving them jobs at, school boards in Iowa or school districts in Iowa, making them our highway patrolmen up in Maine, right? The problem is the illegals have found legal ways to work while still committing legal or immigration fraud. Right? Our system has not been tight enough. I hate this conversation so much because it leads to the logical conclusion of, hey, maybe we should get some digital ID with biometrics and then we could really determine this stuff. Nothing will change because if there's a will, there's a way. You guys could easily close these loopholes. As soon as we find out the superintendent in Iowa runs from the cops, a little bit of internet sleuthing and, hey, this guy's illegal. Shouldn't even be here. That probably explains why he ran, right? It doesn't take that much to do this stuff right. What the government's done behind our backs is they've turned what should be illegals legal. And then now they're like, oh, and by the way, we have to pay for all Americans' healthcare. They're not American. That's the problem. I have no problem paying for someone who's legitimately here on a visa to do it. But when the visas get handed out like Smarties candy on Halloween, I no longer feel that way. Okay. Newt Gingrich thinks that the Democrat Party has really screwed the pooch with their messaging here. And again, it's in these little moments, we get these little things of truth. Newt Gingrich was in power. He was the Speaker of the House. He's been around a long time. So when he says what he's going to say here, I think he's actually being serious. He's kind of joking about it, but he's being serious. And I just want to remind you, they did find cocaine.
You know how hard it is for a major party to design a strategy that has two different stupid things in the same strategy?
Well, who's designing the strategy?
Some guys.
Who's doing this? Is it Hakeem? Is it Nancy? Is it AOC? Is it Schumer? No one knows who's in charge.
Do you want my personally totally uninformed guess?
Yes.
there are 3 or 4 guys and gals, I don't want to be discriminatory, off in a corner at the DNC who, when they have enough cocaine, finally say, we're ready. Now let's do something brilliant. And they come up with stuff like that. You show me a better explanation. Do you know how?
Newt Gingrich's explanation for the Democrats' political position right now is a couple of them are snorting cocaine in the corner. And when they get it just right, they can come up with a messaging that has 2 bad ideas in it. That's pretty funny. And that's why I put that out there. There is a real possibility that Democrats are just snorting cocaine. And they don't know what they're doing. They don't remember the fact that at their presidential primary, everybody raised their hand and said they wanted to give illegals health insurance. And so when we turn around now and they're like, oh, we're not giving illegals health insurance. Well, that's inconsistent with what you said. See what I'm saying? Even the Democrat base could be looking at them going, I thought we wanted illegals to have health insurance. Could you imagine as a Democrat voter, a blue dog, right? Watching the entire field of candidates raise their hands saying they want to pay for healthcare for illegal immigrants. I'll tell you what, if that's weaponizing your virtue, that's not weaponizing your virtue. I don't know what is. In the interview Donald Trump did with OAN, he talked about cuts and firings and some of the things he's going to be doing.
And they're doing things and asking for things that you wouldn't want, and most people that are sane wouldn't want, and patriots wouldn't want. They want illegal aliens to get taken care of with health care. And it's not, look, I have a bigger heart than they do, but it's not even that. Everybody in the world is going to enter our country and say, give us free health care, give us this, give us that. It's going to ruin all of the things that we have, all of the plans that we have. Obamacare was never any good, but it subsists. It's there. And everything will be destroyed because no country has enough money to take care of that. So they want the illegals. They refuse to get away with open borders. They want to do open borders. If they ever got in, they'll open up the borders. We have closed borders now. You only come into our country legally. But they would open up the borders in 2 minutes. And you understand it better than anybody because you've covered it so well for so long. Even though you're a young guy, you've covered it very well. They want transgender for everybody. They want men and women's sports. They haven't learned what happened in the last election. I think they forgot. And it's pretty amazing, actually. But in terms of the dollars or the money that we're talking about, they want us to take care of illegals. They want us to take care of people that can absolutely get a job. They're healthy and strong as you can be and young. And this is not what this was all about.
So if the Democrats want power, one of the best ways to get power is create a whole class of dependent people, which they've done. Unfortunately for the Democrats, most of those people happen to like Donald Trump more than the Democrats, right? You might get us dependent on your WIC programs, but you're not going to get us to cut our kids' woohoos off, right? That's the problem the Democrats have. Nothing that they're doing makes logical sense. It doesn't all jive together unless you're completely ideologically in one tank or you're just trying to destroy the United States of America intentionally. Nothing makes sense. Carlite says, I wonder if they have fentanyl test strips for their Coke. Ha ha ha. I imagine they probably don't because they probably have like a straight source coming out of Venezuela or Colombia or something like that. I imagine they got the good stuff. Never tried it, but I imagine they got the good stuff. Carolyn Levitt says the Dems need to vote for a clean CR. And she says they are starting. They started yesterday. Donald Trump met with Russ Vogt. He put out a really funny meme. Basically like Russ Vogt being the Grim Reaper. Okay. So as a music video, I can't really play it on here. We don't want to listen to 3 minutes of music video, but it was really kind of a cute little thing. So Donald Trump met with Russ Vogt. They're starting to go through and decide what kind of cuts they need to make. And this is what Carolyn Levitt told us yesterday. Got to share the screen.
Federal government right now because fix this problem. And look, we have $0 coming into the federal government right now because the Democrats shut it down. So what Russ Vogt is working diligently on is examining how we can fix this mess to ensure that critical funding continues, that we can get people paid. But the Democrats are making that very difficult. And that's why the president put out a statement this morning saying that we're going to start looking across the board at layoffs and at agencies that we feel do not best serve the American taxpayer that may need to be halted or permanently cut.
So on that, I wanted to ask you about that because he mentioned Russ Vogt in that. I think that came out about 8 o'clock this morning about cutting certain programs that they deem are not necessary. Is that real or is that a negotiating tactic?
Oh, it's very real. And the Democrats should know that they put the White House and the president in this position. And if they don't want further harm on their constituents back home, then they need to reopen the government. It's very simple. Pass the clean continuing resolution, and all of this goes away. We would not be having these discussions here at the White House today if not for the Democrats voting to shut the government down. This is an unfortunate consequence, and the president and Russ Vogt will be meeting on that later too.
So Donald Trump, when he put out his little tweet on this, he thought maybe MAGA or the liberals and Chuck Schumer might actually want some MAGA. They might actually want to make America great again, because otherwise, why else would they do this? Because Trump was very open about the fact that if you shut down the government, we're going to slash it. Like, we might not even try to reopen it. Okay. Anti-Socialist League says the Democrat Party is a dumpster fire. We need an endless supply of popcorn these days. The jokes write themselves with these clown shoes. Yes, it does. Pray the Rosary Daily. Happy Friday. TGIF. I don't know. I don't know the numbers. I don't know where I would even find the numbers, but I'm really curious if it's possible with the reduction in force, furloughs, full-on cuts, if we're even in the ballpark to be able to operate a skeleton federal government based on tariff revenue and fees and stuff like that, rather than, debt. Because that's really, when they set the budget, that's debt, right? They're creating the money to spend. And then we get tax receipts back and kind of lower the cost, but we never pay for it ever, right? So I'm really curious if they can figure out a way to basically get the government to operate at, at zero, right? Just operate with what they've got coming in. I don't know. I don't even know if it's like in the realm of possible by trillions. Who knows? Elon Musk said he could come in and cut 2 trillion and ended up cutting 100 billion. Big difference between those numbers. Representative Gold. Oh man. Chris Murphy, Senator Chris Murphy, kind of tease off against JD Vance. They have a little bit of a counter. There's a little clip they play from JD Vance, and then Chris Murphy is just, again, going irate. Anti-Socialist League, yes, we do need popcorn to watch guys like him and Elizabeth Warren just lying through their teeth.
I mean, listen, we're not dumb. The American people aren't dumb. They know exactly what happened here. Literally within hours of the government shutting down, the White House announced that they were suspending major projects for one city in America, the one city that happens to be represented by the Democratic leader in the House and the Democratic leader in the Senate. What they did is likely illegal. The White House doesn't have the ability to just decide to spend money in Republican states and not spend money in Democratic states. But it tells you what the problem is here. Our democracy is crumbling. We don't have a democracy when the President of the United States gets to decide and pick and choose where federal money is spent and where it isn't spent based upon whether the people that represent those states are nice to him or not. That's not a democracy. And so that's what we're fighting about. We're fighting about health care for American citizens, but we're also fighting about trying to preserve basic democratic norms that guarantee that all Americans are protected, not just Americans who live in states where their representatives are part of Donald Trump's cult.
Okay, so between the DOE and some of the other cuts that Donald Trump proposed, right, New York would take the initial hit. Of course, Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are both from New York, so that's what Senator Murphy is referring to there. He's, you came straight after New York. I would look at it and I'd say just the opposite. I'd say New York's just top of the list. Could have been California too. You guys are probably both really big spenders. Okay. And you guys both have a bunch of blue projects that we just voted against, frankly, right? No more Green Deal stuff, no more energy stuff, no more, grants for climate change studies, this, that, or the other. It's all got to go. I already played this clip of Senator Warren. Why did it come back up in my thing? Okay, this is Scott Bessent, and he is saying here that Donald Trump is unstoppable. I am very much concerned and not sure what 2028 looks like, right? If I get my little crystal ball out and I shake it and I look in it. On one hand, we heard yesterday from Patrick Byrne that the Democrats, these big law firms, Perkins Coie, Wilbur Hale or whatever, have basically put out a hit on anybody who works with Donald Trump. You work with Donald Trump, we come back into power, we've got indictments written up on you, and we're going to come for treason. And Patrick Byrne says they don't care about the law. It doesn't have to look good. They don't care if it really meets parole evidence standards. They're flim-flam with the law, just like they were with J6. They knew I didn't obstruct Congress. I showed up half an hour late. Congress was obstructed. They were already at home, right? I had nothing to do with obstruction of Congress. Doesn't matter. They can sell it. They got it. Same thing with the Jeffrey Combs thing. Like, I don't know. Did he traffic or not? I don't know. We can sell it, right? I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all. And so I don't know if the Democrats think they can still hold on to the elections. I don't know if the Democrats who want power have paid off key Republicans to make sure the Dominion voting machines and the Smartmatic voting machines and the mail-in ballot regime stays into 2028. I don't know. I don't know how much traction Harmeet Dillon's going to get with cleaning up voter rolls. I don't know if the census is going to get done between now and then and do redistricting. I don't know if the different states are going to do their redistricting. There is a lot to unknown as to what it looks like in 2028. We could really truly go from a 20-seat Republican majority, no problem at all, total collapse of the Democrat Party, to we could see Hakeem Jeffries being Speaker of the House, and we could see articles of impeachment by December of 2028. Right? Or I guess it would be like February of 2029, because the House swears in on January 1st. But point is, I could see it swing both directions. So when we're listening to Scott Bessent here, he says that in Trump's first couple months, he's been unstoppable. I really am curious from the inside perspective if they've been able to get done everything they need to get done. And the stuff that we see as resistance is just a few points, right? We used to talk about how Donald Trump was fighting on 10 battlefronts. Right now, he's fighting on 30 battlefronts. I mean, that is one of the things that week after week, day after day, Trump is hitting big things. Everything Trump's done, the Democrats have to rebut, they have to reject, they have to counterpoint, they have to counter narrative. And Trump's doing so many things, from Department of Energy cuts, EPA cuts, Treasury stuff. We still don't have an IRS commissioner. We still, he's messing up their entertainment at the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian in DC. He's coming at them on every single front. And like we played in that clip earlier, their hope is that if the Democrats ever do come back to power, they'll have slashed the federal government to the point to where it can't be rebuilt. So let's see what Scott Bessent says. He thinks Donald Trump's been doing amazing and has been totally unstoppable. We'll see if he can continue to be unstoppable.
But getting back to Joe's kind of premise on this, are these furloughs or job layoffs in the federal government, are those going to come anyway? Because that's what the Democrats have suggested, that the Trump administration is going to push forward with layoffs and with furloughs anyway, whether they do this or not. Is that true?
Again, it's a talking point. Senator Schumer, Representative Jeffries, they're weak, they're discombobulated, they don't represent the American people, and they're making up excuses. So we'll see. I think that this is an opportunity, and they're using this opportunity. President Trump, in the first 9 months now, has been unstoppable. They've tried to stop him in the courts. They've tried to stop him in the press, and now they're trying to stop him with this shutdown.
But getting back to,
do you think that they just got to the point where all they could do was a shutdown? Opposition at all costs doesn't even matter anymore what we're opposing. That's very possible. Stop them! Shut down the government. Okay, well, I'll slash government more. No, we can't win. When you listen to Bessent and listen to some of these guys, you would think that the Democrats are a collapsed party and they don't have a shot at anything. Then why are Republicans afraid of being hung in 2028? Why are Republican attorneys working in the different districts not doing their job? I mean, you've got the full support of the president right now to go after these, quote, criminals, right? What's going on? I don't know. I don't know. When the last Refuge post there, excuse me, the real enemy isn't the one out in front that you're fighting, the ones with baseball bats and guns and stuff and bad ideas. The real enemy is the guy standing in your side who will shoot you in the ear when the guys with the bats pay him off. And that's what I think we're seeing here. We're seeing Republicans who don't know either, but they'll take the payoff and they'll obstruct and they'll slow things down. And we, the peasants, have to live here. We just have to suffer through it. Okay, guys, let me just look through my stuff coming up here. I want to make sure. Oh, man, we got to hit this. Okay, I got to organize this real quick on my back end so I can do this right. Okay, so we have, sorry guys, I got to get this all in order, otherwise it's going to be kind of a mess here. Okay, great. All right, first things first. So in England, we had digital IDs being pushed, right? Kind of coming out of nowhere. Not coming out of nowhere. We've seen it coming for a while, but kind of out of nowhere. Okay, everybody has to have a digital ID in order to work. And why do we have to do that? Oh, to stop poverty. Yeah, right. Like as though those two things are necessarily connected. Because I owe a job to you, right? If I have my digital ID, do you then owe me a job, or does it just mean you're going to allow me to work? Okay, so this is a man clearly from Europe. He's got an accent, and he's talking about digital ID as being mandatory. This is coming. The United States already has the real ID, which is your digital ID. It's your ID with your biometric data. England's implementing this. Vietnam implemented this. They just closed down like 83 million bank accounts. Okay. So this is what we have coming.
You've probably heard people say they can't force you to have a digital ID. And they're right. Technically, Section 74 of the UK's Data Protection and Digital Information Bill actually says nothing in this act gives any power to require an individual to establish a digital identity. Sounds reassuring, right? No one can force you. But here's the catch.
That's actually the same thing we have here in the United States. In 2012, the Supreme Court made a landmark ruling that said the United States federal government has the power to control commerce and to regulate that commerce in the public interest, but does not have the power to force commercial inactivity, which in law, you can kind of read the inverse, which means they cannot force commercial activity. So they can't actually force you to get a real ID or digital ID, but they can sure make life miserable if you don't have one.
They don't need to force you. They just need to make life impossible without it. So although there will be no law saying that you must, you just can't work without it, eat without it, bank without it, travel without it, and so on and so forth. And I've been saying this for a while. The days of the state coming and kicking your door off and dragging you out of your house to make you comply are over. Instead, you are forced by exclusion. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's already happening with the mandatory digital ID for right to work, and it's how they'll roll it out everywhere. No legal compulsion, just practical coercion. So to break down what this actually means, you can disagree with the agenda on principle all you like, but if you're not in a practical position to resist it, you'll be forced to comply through exclusion. For example, you may disagree on principle with a policy that mandates digital IDs to access the food system, but if you're not in a practical position to feed yourself without said system, then you're going to be hard pressed to not submit. And this is why for so long I've been banging on about creating independence from the mainstream system, to have the ability to provide the essentials of life independently of the mainstream. That being said, I understand that not everyone can or wants to build an off-grid farm from scratch like we did, but even so, you do still need to have access to land, independent water, energy and food production, and a like-minded community. With these 5 things in place, you can resist the mainstream agenda on principle and in practice. And fortunately, we've been working hard to build a dedicated space to offer you exactly this. The Wild Minds Network will connect.
So he's got his own Wild Minds Network that helps facilitate and support people who are like-minded like that and want to actually have some freedom. Hold on just a moment. That was urgent. My battery was about to die on my computer. Apparently, I had it plugged in up here, but not down there. I was like, oh, battery's about to die. Okay. So, along with the digital ID, right, they can coerce you by making you get the digital ID in order to do things like, buy groceries. It gets even worse than that. Not only can they coerce you by exclusion, but they also have eyes on everything you're doing. This is Representative Hagerman from Wyoming, and some really not. Here's the problem. It's not shocking anymore. It should be shocking. We should be blown out. This should be like the news story of the day. But instead, we're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Anti-Socialist League says, I've lost count of all the criminal referrals that have been sent to the DOJ, and we have seen little to no action. Spineless jellyfish. I know, right? You realize I was indicted on January 7th, 2021. Okay, like it took them no time to get the indictment, but yet we've got these criminals rolling around. We can't get indictments ever. Even with criminal referrals from the legislature. Required digital ID sounds like COVID vaccines all over again, but worse. Oh, yeah, it's way worse because it ties into this.
What we have learned is that the IRS, in fact, has been using AI to access bank accounts of American citizens without any kind of a search warrant or even without any specific claim that they have committed a crime. So this was something that was discovered by an undercover journalist, and what they found is that the IRS has claimed that they have access to every single person's bank account This person also indicated that they've been working with the Department of Justice and that they have absolutely no problem whatsoever going after the little guy to make sure that they are paying their taxes. This is such a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment that Jim Jordan and I sent a letter to the IRS demanding that they provide additional information about what they are doing with AI and what they are doing to protect the civil rights of American citizens. What we have learned is...
Congress shall pass no law infringing on the privacy of Americans. All right, well, we don't have to pass a law, but we will just infringe on the privacy. Like, we don't have to authorize ourselves to do it. We can just do it because we can. This goes back to what RFK was saying 2 days ago, right? Any tool we give them, they're going to do it. If they have the ability to look into your bank account, and then the only thing that keeps them from doing it is the box that they check that says, I got a warrant. If all they got to do is check the box that says, let me into the bank account, they'll just check that box. Like, there's just no... You can't trust them. There's no integrity in the smoke monster, in the government, right? Okay, clearly you shouldn't be just cruising my bank account with AI. Oh, that's okay. We're doing it. Go get your digital ID so we can make sure to connect your bank account to your online browsing activity and that concert you went to and when you went under the toll bridge, and make sure when you walk into Walmart, the AI there can pick you up, and then we can figure out what you're browsing for in the store, and, make sure you get that digital ID and make sure you put it on your phone so your phone knows that you are who you are, so that we can ping you with your phone. And, when you go to church and you associate with a whole bunch of, Catholic fundamentalists that want to do Latin mass, we can make sure to add you to the surveillance grid. Do we ever get a respite? The only way you can fix this is change it yourself. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. That means don't get the digital IDs and figure out a way to live without it. Just figure it out. When I got debanked, I figured out how to live my life without a bank account. You can do it. It can happen. You can make it happen. All right. This is Fox News, changing topics almost completely. We have an armed conflict, an official new armed conflict, and for the first time in my lifetime in this hemisphere.
Breaking moments ago, the Trump administration says it is now engaged in, quote, armed conflict with drug cartels. That's according to a memo to Congress that was obtained by Fox News. Our Peter Ducey has got more on the breaking news live from the White House. Peter, I assume this is in response to the criticisms that have been leveled at the president for taking out those drug boats.
Yes, and John, those criticisms come from Democratic lawmakers who say they are concerned that these cartel members, cartel drug boat captains, are not getting due process before a bomb drops on their head. President Trump and his team do not seem moved one bit by that, and so they drafted this memo making this official to Congress. Part of it says, based upon the cumulative effects of these hostile acts against the citizens and interests of the United States and friendly foreign nations, the president is determined that the United States is in a non-international armed conflict with these designated terrorist organizations. The president directed the Department of War to conduct operations against them pursuant to the law of armed conflict. And the president just talked about this week.
If you try to poison our people, we will blow you out of existence, because that's the only language they really understand. That's why you don't see any more boats on the ocean. You don't see any boats. Around Venezuela, there's nothing.
And it's not just Venezuela. The president's team is putting out the word that cartels throughout the Caribbean are now on notice.
We in the UN Security Council just took action yesterday on the gangs that have taken over Haiti, right off Florida.
Yeah, so we're in active armed conflict now with Venezuela. Now, critics are not liking this. First of all, did Congress declare war or not? I believe we're past that discussion. I don't think Congress has to declare war anymore. Sorry. I know the Constitution says they're supposed to, but it also says we're supposed to transact in gold and silver. And I'm also supposed to have constitutional protections like, right to privacy in my bank account. So I don't really think that I can go to the Constitution and be like, well, only Congress can declare war, but IRS can just randomly search your bank account and, we don't have to transact in gold and silver. And, that whole senators being elected by the legislature of the certain states. No, we don't do that anymore. We just change it. We just do whatever we want. Okay. I don't think it matters. I think we're in armed conflict. And I think the Trump administration's thought process on this is right. If if institutionally the government of Venezuela is assisting in the trafficking of drugs to the United States or facilitating other kind of trafficking or criminal activity from other countries like Iran, Cuba, and China, right, then we have to go to war with Venezuela, whatever that looks like. How can you not? Now, if you go back and you remember the narco terrorists run the place, the Emerald Robinson super thread episode we did that I had to put into private because it was shadow banning this whole account. China wears Iran, which wears Cuba, which wears Venezuela like a glove, or China wears Venezuela like a glove, however you want to think of it. China is kind of the great, big, bad evil, and Venezuela is the glove. So they're the ones that do the work of the Communist Party, do the criminal work. And so Venezuela is considered a failed state in the fact that Maduro is a drug trafficker, human trafficker. He is a criminal. And not like how we jokingly and lovingly call all government criminal and organized crime and my gang's big. No, not in a loving way like that. We're talking like literally they're just a crime syndicate. That's all they are. So this month, it looks like things might actually get pretty hot on the war front. This is a little bit scary. On one hand, I have a lot of faith in Donald Trump and his mentality to do this quickly, but on the other hand, unintended consequences.
This month of October is going to be the month the bombs start dropping in Iran again. But my whole question is, if we're doing that or we're supporting that, what does that mean for what we're planning to do in Venezuela? Because I'm hearing from people that we're getting ready to go into Venezuela in the next 2 weeks. I don't know if we can do both at the same time, or if Trump is just planning to do support only of Israel, which is what it looks like right now. He's not even talking about bombing Iran like we did the last time. So this is going to be the question is, what does the sequencing look like here? Because the U.S. is going to have grave difficulty fighting a two-front war if that's what ends up happening here. Not to mention the stuff going on in Europe right now with Russia.
So I don't tend to think we're going to fight an official two-front war, but clearly we're still behind Ukraine, at least selling weapons to NATO. But this situation in Venezuela is getting hot. We've got aircraft carriers, battleships. We're bombing boats in the Caribbean Ocean. It's pretty serious. So it could get pretty hot. I don't know. So we will watch that develop. I had a prison guard who told me in 2008 on a submarine, he hit the button that launched a Tomahawk missile into Venezuela. And you don't really find that in the news anywhere. So we've been doing stuff to and with Venezuela for a long time. It's just now it's finally at the forefront. Okay, guys, it is time to jump over to private. I'm going to be talking about J6 news in private. Let's see. I think everything we're going to be talking about is J6 news. But before we do that, I am going to leave on this note. It's going to be Steve Bannon talking about how MAGA does not want this war. And then right after that, we are going to head into private. So last little clip before we leave all of you people in the normal public. I don't know. I always like to say it, public, private. And before we head over to private.
Well, this story is very big, and it's quite controversial. There's not an insignificant amount of the MAGA movement that's saying, hey, hang on. we got to take care of the drug cartels. Maybe fentanyl is coming up more through Mexico, and we ought to be taking care of the Mexican cartel and their partners in the Chinese Communist Party than down in Venezuela worried about cocaine in Maduro. But so this is going to be very controversial for not just between Democrats and Republicans or between the House and the White House, but also internally to the MAGA movement. Where do people? This story is very big, and it's quite controversial.
Excuse me.
Insignificant amount of the MAGA movement.
Too many things going on. Pray the Rosary Daily said that Harriet Hagman from Wyoming. Let me get back to her. She's very smart and articulate, unseated Cheney. And Anti-Socialist League says, Pray the Rosary Daily agreed. Funny thing, when she unseated Miss Piggy Cheney, she wiped the floor with her and the vote wasn't even close. It wasn't even close at all. Cheney went all in on her family hate for Mr. Trump. It wasn't even close at all. Oh, that was me commenting twice. Okay, guys, show's over in the public. We're heading over into the private. And for those of you that join us, we'll see you there. We're going to be talking a little bit of J6, and then we'll call it a day. We'll see you guys on Monday.